How about them Saints?
Who that? Who that? Who that said they gonna beat them Saints?
Welcome back to the DBG podcast. I'm your host, Dave, and joining me is special guest Calvin, co-host of the Days Not Over podcast.
Dave, it's nice to be here, man.
Saints going to the bowl. We beat the shit out of the Cowboys. Put up 40 points the first 2 weeks. We are a top 3 highest scoring offense in league history in the first 2 weeks.
44-19 to be exact for all the Cowboys fans out there listening. Y'all probably ain't listening because y'all saw what the damn title was. Y'all saw Saints. Y'all don't want nothing to do with it. I already know. But it's fun to listen to this stat right here, right? Because fun fact, I know he just mentioned, right? Top 2 all time in terms of scoring, top 2 weeks. The only other team that's above us is us with 94 points in 2009. And y'all know what happened in 2009 with the Saints. Y'all know what happened. I mean, talk about this could be one of the best Cinderella stories of all time, right? I mean, imagine. I know it's early, but imagine we find our way to the Super Bowl with Dennis Allen as head coach after abysmal 3 years prior and some very, very, very questionable drafting. And we get to the Super Bowl, and the Super Bowl just so happens to be right there on Poitras Street.
Man, you
It's
couldn't
exciting.
script it up any better.
You couldn't. And I know everybody talking about, NFL scripts. NFL, if y'all want a script, y'all listen, that's the script. That's the script. Had Lil Wayne come out at halftime with Kendrick, too. I ain't forget about that.
Oh, man, if Wayne came out in New Orleans, that'd be crazy.
You remember when the lights went out? I think it was 2014 when it was out there. That's going to happen again if Wayne comes back.
Oh, that's happening. Dude, that was the funniest thing when that went out. All those memes that were going around. You'd see like Sean Payton sabotaging the lights, payback for his suspension, all the energy memes. That was incredible.
Oh, man, that was a great time. I hope it happens again. Not the lights turn off, but at least a great Super Bowl in New Orleans.
But anyway, getting back to the football, it's crazy what firing Pete Carmichael does for a team.
Pete Carmichael needs to be tried for war crimes. He needs to be tried for treason. And I need the FBI, the CIA, NASA. I need DOT. I need who else? What
The
other
Sewage and
agencies
Water
are there?
Board.
I need the FDA. I need literally I need the CDC. Every agency that America has, they need to be investigating Pill Poppin' Sean and Pete Carmichael, but mostly Pete Carmichael. That is crazy how 1 year can change. It's virtually the same team. We're a year older.
It is, and
But
that's the
Clint
thing.
Clint-
Like last year at the beginning of the season, a lot of the talk was when Derek Carr came, where it's like Carmichael's just such a bad OC that if he had someone else, we just fired him, Carr would do so much better. And then the season kept going on, and we were just terrible. So everyone started to doubt. It's like, well, Carr must just suck too. Well, we fire Carmichael, keep the exact same team minus drafting a tackle, and Trevor Penning becomes a great player. The run game becomes great. Play action game becomes great. It's crazy what having a good scheme instead of calling goal line fade 4 times in a row will do for a team.
I don't think I've seen us run on 2nd and 10 either. God, the 2nd and 10 runs used to drive me absolutely insane.
Dude, I hate that. And that's like Pete Carmichael being back in the day because that used to be a big thing where it's like if you don't gain any yards on first downs, all these coordinators would want to get some yards back on second down. Be like, hey, if we get 3 yards, make it a 3rd and manageable. Well, no. Second down, if it's 2nd and 10, that's 2 shots that you have to go try and get a chunk of yards, either get a first down or get closer. Have the whole playbook open instead of the defense knowing, all right, they're going to run it. And it's just worked wonders, but it's just so much fun watching the Saints offense where you know that there's excitement. Like, there's a lot of good. One of the big takeaways is he's running that Shanahan offense. Saints are one of the top teams in the league in using motions and shifts before snaps now. Last year, we were by far the bottom of the league.
We went from last to first. 52.2% of our plays pre-snap motion.
I mean, it's what the league is nowadays because these coordinators have realized, hey, yes, it's a lot of work to install, but if you get it installed, the players have it down. It's so hard to defend because you have to give away your defense. You've got your receiver can already be in motion getting a running start. There's just so much that you can do from it. And then you take that, you mix in different looks where one play you have the motion, it's coming a guy on an in around. So next play he does that same exact motion and then goes and runs a deep route. How do you cover that when you got Shaheed, who can run the ball, who can go deep, and you got all these weapons? It's beautiful to watch.
Now, can I say something that I think has to be said before we even go any further? Right? Um, we got to give credit where credit's due. I'm not going to apologize to Derek Carr yet. No, no, no. But first I want to say my biggest thing last year was if we were going to suck, at least let's make it look fun. And I think that's why a lot of people wanted James because James is going to throw the ball regardless, right? Don't matter if it's a pick or a touchdown. There's really no in between with him, pick or touchdown, and that's at least fun to watch. So seeing how a year later Alvin Kamara looks like he's smiling after every run. He can have a 1 yard run. He's getting up smile. You just see all his grill just shining. He's just so happy. He's just so happy. Chris Olave, he's on the sideline having a great time doing his little dances and stuff with Rashish. They're having such a great time. And if you look at last year, you remember how just dismal everybody looked. It just looked like everyone just did not want to be there. We had everybody questioning if Jamal Williams was what. Jamal Williams has been running very hard in this offense. He looks energized. I think that goes for everybody. Everybody looks energized. All of a sudden, Trevor Penning can play right tackle just out of nowhere. Talise Fuega, he's Willie Rofe as far as I'm concerned. And the rest of the O line are just humming. Lucas Patrick, great signing. He's humming. Whole offensive line firing all cylinders. Everyone looks happy. You got Derek Carr doing a Michael Jackson dance move in the end zone. I
How about
mean,
Derek
we would
Carr?
never see a
As I say, Derek Carr last week. How about him lowering his shoulder? Now we don't want to see him doing that too much, getting hurt. But late in the game, he lowers his shoulder on the run and goes and smiles because he's just having fun out there.
He's happy. Taysom Hill. I mean, Taysom Hill is gonna be Taysom Hill. He's gonna be happy anyway. He's like a
Yeah, he's
he's like
always
a
smiling.
he's like a blind dog in a meat house. He's gonna be happy regardless. But even the defense, right? We were questioning how old this defense possibly is. This defense is moving faster than last year. The DBs are like they want to actually hit things this year. Like it, I have to give credit where credit's due because Dennis Allen surprised me because he's gotten this team from where it was last year to now. It's like people like the players actually bought in. And being a player myself now, I understand the importance of that and having coaches that you can gel with. And I thought maybe Dennis lost the locker room, but this shows me that it just took some time. And like I said, it's still early. Everything can fall to shit. Hope not, but you know, it's still early. But at least it shows that the locker room seems to be bought in. You got the club dub back dancing in the locker room after the games. You got Dennis Allen quoting Kendrick Lamar, talking about, I guess sometimes you have to pop out and show him. Like that's just this is stuff that we used to see in 2018. And it's just cool. But the big thing I wanted to say before I start yapping too much was I am extremely impressed because there's something that you said, and that's you got to get it installed, right? Teams don't want to do all these motions and all these creative, convoluted ideas and play calls because it is a lot of work. But the fact that Kubiak comes in and in less than a year, I mean, we're talking when did he get hired? Like April? From April to now, he's installed an absolute masterclass of a game plan week in, week out in terms of play design and play calls. And you would expect, right? Because when Gruden first got there, I'm gonna use the Raiders for example. When Gruden first got with the Raiders, it was a little rough year, right? Because it was a new system for Carr. But then that next year, firing on all cylinders. I mean, how many times do you see a team go from almost a dead last offense to the number one offense in the league because the offense coordinator came in and in less than a year, on the first year of that offense coordinator's tenure, is firing like this
Well, not only
on
that, to
from
be
week one.
firing week one, firing week two, like you don't see that. Usually, it takes a bit of time to get it all together, get it all clicking. They just skipped all that. They just said, "Hey, let's just fire right away." And I will say,
It,
we could yap about the Saints forever, so I want to move on to the Cowboys. Dak Prescott, he didn't look bad. He had the only one touchdown, two picks, so his stat line looks a bit rough. Those picks kind of came later on where he just had to force the ball. He made some bad decisions, but the Cowboys were moving the ball to start the game. The Saints defense just did a really good job locking in, and when they got into the red zone, shutting them down. When they got close, shutting them down and making them kick field goals. It's a lot like what happened in the Bucks game that we're going to talk about later, where the Bucks had like not even half the yards I think that the Lions have. Their offense was looking dominant, but they'd get to the red area. They're forcing turnovers. They're forcing field goals. It's what the Saints did. But I think the Cowboys' defense is a really big takeaway. Maybe the Saints' offense really is just that good. I mean, they've looked great the first two games, but the Cowboys on defense, a lot of what they rely on is getting those stops on early downs and then getting those pass rushers after the quarterback, unleashing Micah Parsons, just knowing, hey, you're not going to have time to throw on third and long. We're going to get after you. The Saints had a beautiful game plan where they got good yards on first and second down. They pretty much didn't have any third and longs they had to deal with, and they weren't letting the Cowboys defense get into rhythm. I think that's the thing that the Cowboys moving forward, they didn't stop the run at all. They have to be able to do that if they want to be able to get their defense set up like they need.
Well, so that once again, right, goes into to Clint Kubiak because I watched Baldy's breakdown, and he mentioned that the Saints are going to be a left-handed team, right, following Fuega. Uh, a lot of our runs were outside zones, and a lot of that is because, hey, we're gonna go test Trayvon Diggs. Sure, he can cover, but can he tackle? Can he stop the run? No. And I think that was pretty genius because, hey, why not? We can run away from Micah. Micah was absolutely decimated, just or neutralized, I should say, neutralized this entire game. And I don't. I told a couple Cowboys fans this for them, right? I wouldn't sound the alarms yet because I think even though it still kind of feels a little weird, because it's like, how do you really evaluate the Saints in 2 weeks, considering what they were last year? They played the Panthers week one, and then now they play a supposed right NFC Championship contending team and put them in the dirt.
Hey, let's not
Easy.
go that
They just
far an NFC Championship contending team because it has been since 1996 when the Cowboys last made it that far, even though every year's their year, but I digress.
well, hey, look, we can at least say it's fair to say they are a top three team in the NFC. Right? You could say Eagles, you could say 49ers, and you could say Cowboys. I don't think that's off to say. Maybe you put the Packers above them. Doesn't really matter. But they're going to contend. They're going to be a 10, 11, 12 plus win team, right? So you put them down in the dirt. The defense, right? They drafted Mozzie Smith, what was it, last year? Doesn't seem like it's paying off so far. Um, he was also a non-factor in the game, especially for someone who's supposed to be their run stopper. And you're right. Mike Zimmer's defense, he wants to blitz. That's his thing. It's kind of like Todd Bowles, right? They want to blitz. Well, if you don't get him in a situation to blitz, and we're sitting here throwing quick passes, running the ball, throwing some play action there, there was a moment in the game, I forget when, but I'm looking at the way the defense is setting. The defense is kind of sitting on their heels a little bit. The linebackers, they're not committing to runs immediately. They're not committing to passing me. It's like they're just confused. They're stunned. They don't know what is coming at them. They don't know what to do. So that's why I say I don't necessarily think this is a problem. Obviously, right? You give up 44 points, that's a problem for any defense. But I just think Mike Zimmer got absolutely lapped around multiple times. And I mean, remember last time, right? I don't know if it was the last time that Alvin Kamara played Mike Zimmer. Maybe we had 6 touchdowns on Christmas Day on a Mike Zimmer defense. So, and Eric Kendricks was also there for that game. So maybe it's just an Alvin Kamara versus Eric Kendricks and Mike Zimmer thing. Who knows? But I wouldn't sound the alarms yet. Dak did not lose you this game. He definitely didn't win it. But shout out to Paulson Adebo and Alontae Taylor for basically neutralizing CeeDee Lamb also. I think that's understated outside the big touchdown. I don't think he caught another ball after that. So I just think this was just Mike McCarthy and Mike Zimmer just getting just absolutely outcoached.
I agree with you, and it's a really good sign to be seeing from a team where you've got a whole new system and you're already out coaching teams. Now, the next step will be how do they adjust when teams are now starting to see what the Saints want to do? Defenses are going to adjust, so we got to counter adjust. Be interesting to see how that goes down. But moving on to the next game, how about that Chiefs Bengals game? I mean, it feels like every single time they play, it's just going to go down to the very last possession, and this one did not disappoint.
You know, I don't hate the Chiefs. For those who don't know, I'm going to school in Missouri now. Um, Nothing but Chiefs fans up here, as you would imagine. And I'm only an hour and a half away from KC. So definitely deep in. I'm deep behind enemy lines right now. Uh, with my Saints jersey on and everything, but it's just amazing to me how how the Chiefs always find their way out of an L. I feel like the Bengals are one of those teams that has their number, but just can't ever finish the job. And it's so irritating watching it from a neutral fan standpoint that you just want a good game regardless. And we're going to get. I mean, I'm looking at this Chiefs team. Pacheco, he's out now for a couple weeks. Kelsey, it looks like he's just ready to go retire on the beach with Taylor Swift at this point. And Patrick Mahomes is still Patrick Mahomes. Xavier Worthy, great. Rasheed Rice, great. But man, Steve Spagnuolo, he always finds a way with neutralizing these supposed high power offenses. And maybe the Bengals offense just isn't what it's what we think it's supposed to be because I mean there's plenty of times where they just kind of disappoint. But I gotta say it, Dave. I don't want to be that guy, but man, why does it always seem like the Chiefs are getting a penalty anytime bad ball on like fourth down or he throws a pick in any part of the game? They just throw the flag after the result is over. And if it ain't a completion, first down for the Chiefs, that flag is coming out. Pass interference, defense, holding, defense, roughing the passer, defense. It's crazy to me how often it seems like that's happening. Or I'm gonna go back real quick to week one. How many times did we see the Ravens get called for what was it? Illegal shift because the or illegal formation because the tackle is too far back off the line, while the Chiefs right tackle is jumping off the line early and they're not calling it. And we haven't seen that get called really for the whole year after that. So I'm gonna say this, Chiefs. I don't know. I don't know if y'all can do it this year. I don't know. What do you think, Dave? What do you think?
Well, the one thing I'll say with that pass interference, it was definitely a penalty, but the thing that sucks with that is they don't call that in the first quarter. They don't call that in the second quarter. They probably don't call that in the third quarter. They just let them play. It gets to the fourth quarter. Why are you calling it differently? Called if it's a penalty, it should be called the whole game. But that's just something with the refs that they just tend to do. My takeaway with the Bengals, I think Zach Taylor's a bad coach. Yes, he brought
Yeah.
them to the Super Bowl, and yes, that was impressive. But before that run, they wanted him fired. After that run, they really haven't done much since. Yes, they made it to that AFC Championship and lost, but they always will be disappointing and making things harder than they need to be. They've started 0-2 the past 3 seasons. I think they're like 1-10 in Week 1 games since Taylor's been the coach. They don't play anyone during the preseason. Half the team doesn't practice, it seems like, and I just don't know if they're preparing correctly. Meanwhile, you see on the Chiefs, they're a well-coached team, and they win games that they maybe shouldn't have won because of their coaching being just so much better. It's just the Bengals need to show me something if I ever want to be able to pick them as a contender because they'll have all these big weeks and their explosions in the middle of the year, but they just have too many lapses to be a contender right now.
They kind of remind me of the Bills a little bit. I think the Bills are well, I'm gonna say the Bills last year. I think they're a little bit better, but how many times have we seen those lapses that you talk about with the Bills where it's like this shouldn't be happening, right? One week the offense is scoring 30, 40 points, and the next week they're scoring 6 points. And that to me, that's a direct correlation for preparedness. I mean, you look at the Saints, 2 plus point weeks. You're telling me y'all are preparing really well week in, week out so far. S- And I mean, with an offense like the Bengals have on paper, yes, they lost to Joe Mixon, but on paper, right? You have Jamar Chase, who's probably going to end up being maybe the highest paid. I don't know if he gets more than Justin Jefferson. I don't know. Um, you got T. Higgins. I mean, that in today's NFL, top two, you have a wide receiver one and a wide receiver two, but the wide receiver two can also be a wide receiver one. That's kind of how this operates now, and that's indicative of a successful offense, or it should be at least. And Zach Moss is not a bad running back by no stretch of the imagination. We seen what he did when Jonathan Taylor was out last year and he was with the Colts. So the fact that that offense, and then you have Joe Burrow, who's kind of put in this Justin Herbert realm of, oh, he's elite. I think they rate him higher than Justin Herbert, but it's like he's elite. He's elite. Well, I mean, in moments like this, it's just I don't see it, and it supposedly fixed the line, and so I'm with you on this. I think Zach Taylor is not the right coach. I mean, you have no choice but to go for the rest of the year. So maybe they figure something out. I still feel like once Jamar Chase gets his contract figured out and T. Higgins is back, then maybe you start seeing them, hit 4-wheel drive a little bit in the mud. But right now, they're in like purgatory plus. That's what I'll say.
Well, they are a team that they'll usually start off slow like this, and then they'll pick it up and start to look a lot better. But there's really no excuse to start off this slow every single year. I mean, they basically don't show up the first 2 weeks of the season consistently, and they dig themselves into a hole, especially when they're kind of getting bailed out right now by the Ravens not looking as good as they should look, and the Browns sucking. So the Steelers are right now leading the division, and that's a team that on paper they should be better than. But the way they dig themselves into a hole is just that's a sign of a lack of preparedness, lack of care, really. But the one thing I want to take away from the Zach Taylor offense, part of this is on Burrow because he really is always looking to make that big play, but their offense is just too complicated. Like they're trying to do too much. The weakness of this team is their O-line, and yet they'll be trying to make these deep plays almost every single time. The routes just take so long to develop, and it puts Burrow under more pressure than he should be. When you have a bad offensive line, they need to get that quick game going more. Yes, those home run shots to Jamar Chase are great, but sometimes you just got to take what you can and just move the ball in a sustained drive, and that's something that they really struggle to do because they really want to just have that explosive offense.
I agree. I agree. I think a lot of people don't really look into how much it really means to have a scheme that's designed for your quarterback. And we're going to get into that later, talking about schemes designed for your quarterback with a certain team that just talked about their QB1. Do you know where I'm going with that? But uh, I saw this thing where it was like the problem now is that well, I think Tom Brady mentioned it. Correct me if I'm wrong, if you've seen it, but he mentioned that with the quarterbacks today, they're coming from these college systems that are just kind of making it really, really simple for them and just kind of making them dumb in the way. They're not really learning necessarily how to read defenses or how to go through progressions on their own. They're just kind of told, okay, it's cover two, and I know that as the OC and the QB coach. So I'm going to tell you that we're going to throw this. This is your hot route right here. And if it ain't open, then you look for this route. And if it ain't open, do it, run, whatever. It just, it's kind of, that's why you kind of don't see right? Those Drew Breeses, those Ben Roethlisbergers, Eli Mannings, those Tom Brady's, Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers. You're not going to see that for a while because these offenses in college aren't really doing anything too crazy. I mean, under center right now, I mean, quarterbacks get in the league, go under center for the first time and lose their mind. And that's supposed to be a simple thing for quarterbacks. So it's really, really, really important that you understand who your quarterback is. And I mean, they're not running, right, in LSU 2019 offense. Um, could they? Sure. I mean, hell, they have his one of his top receivers on the team. But it's like you said, the O line's weak. Figure that out. Maybe they can do something. But we have a very, very, very questionable quarterback ecosystem now. And I just feel like more than ever, office coordinators mean so much to teams, so
Well,
much more than we can ever imagine now.
Well, I think this could be really interesting going forward with what you said about college quarterbacks because this is the first year that college quarterbacks now have the built-in microphone in their helmets like NFL quarterbacks have, so they can communicate with their OC. And I mean, I think that could be something that dumbs down the game even more because while it is something that you could try more complex calls, really, if you have the OC in your ear, he's there for, I don't know when it cuts off. I know in the NFL it's like, what, at 20 seconds or something on the play clock, 15 seconds it cuts off. I don't know the rule in college, but even then, That's enough time to see generally what the coverage is, generally get some adjustments in. So if the coach is able to do all of that for the quarterback, it's gonna you're gonna see quarterbacks that are even further behind, and it'll make a guy like C.J. Stroud, who just has an incredible football IQ, even more special.
CJ Stroud, man. I'm really glad CJ Stroud is turning out great. He's also putting off the Ohio State quarterback agenda, right? Because I mean we've heard what people say about Ohio State quarterbacks. They don't work out. So I'm glad one is figuring it out. One for the good guys.
It is. I mean, it's really impressive just how good he is. And I mean, we'll cover that game later with the Sunday night, but it's just he does not look like a second year quarterback at all. He looks like he's been in the league for 10 years.
And the fact that he failed his Wonderlic test and everybody was just, oh my God, he's stupid. Oh, he's not gonna be good. He can't pass this. Da, da, da. Now look at him. I mean, that's shout out to CJ Stroud. And it's crazy because quarterbacks are like when they do the post game, go up to him calling him OG. I mean, this guy's the same age as you. So that just tells you the amount of respect that he's garnering across the league. Um, big CJ Stroud guy. Love CJ Stroud. Love what he's doing. And I'm sure that you probably second that statement too.
Dude, he's just so fun to watch. I mean, the way he plays football, and you see, he's able to make throws and make reads that just so impressive. You saw it against the Bears. He'd be scrambling out, roll out, and then go make a pinpoint pass to a guy on the run instead of just like throwing it away because he knows that he can make that. But he makes good decisions at the same time. It's just fun to watch. But I know we've talked a lot about this game and we need to move on, but one last thought I wanted to say about the Chiefs. When you're talking about the roster construction, the you're mentioning their defense, and that's really the reason why they're so good. Because last year, their offense wasn't even that great, but their defense stepped up, and it's because yeah, they paid Mahomes so much money, but he's good enough that he's able to work without a top end receiver. The Bengals are about to pay Jamar Chase some crazy money, and look at all the holes that they already have. Like, it's going to get so much worse because you're going to be paying Joe Burrow that much money. You're going to be paying Jamar that much money. T. Higgins, hopefully, I mean, he's a great player, but they can't pay him, especially with how available he's been. But I mean, when you pay your quarterback that much money and pay your receiver that much money, there's no track record for success. You've seen Bills fall apart doing that, Bengals fall apart doing that, and none of these other teams have paid their quarterback and really gotten any better. The quarterback market's going to crash at some point, is my theory, because these contracts keep going up. You see Tua's getting this much money, Dak Prescott's getting this much money, who good quarterbacks, but they're not like top three. It's just not sustainable to pay your quarterback that much money, then pay a receiver that much money, and expect to build the rest of your team around it.
I'll tell you something, Dave. You just absolutely slammed a red button in my brain because the amount of anger. I don't want to sound like a hater or nothing, but the amount of anger that it's irrational anger too, right? Because when I got that tweet notification that said Jordan Love will now be the highest paid quarterback in NFL history, I almost threw the phone out the window. And I literally called somebody just to rant about it. And I said the same thing that you said. This quarterback market is going to explode. It's going to implode. It's going to crash. That's just what it's going to do. And I'm sitting here. I remember the time, and I know you remember it too. Whenever Drew Brees was up for a contract extension, I'm pretty sure it was like 2014, 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. We had a couple down years, and we were like, okay, he's going to be the first $100 million quarterback in NFL history. And people are like, we shouldn't pay him that. We have too many holes in the roster. He's going to be taking up too much money. He don't deserve it. Blah blah blah. So at the time, we were sitting here talking about a multiple time Pro Bowler, a multiple time All Pro player, a multiple time top three vote getter and MVP race. Should have had two MVPs at that point already, mind you, but whatever. And a Super Bowl winning QB. And we're sitting here arguing if he's worth $100 million or not. And then now you look at it, Tua gets, he becomes the highest paid quarterback, and you look at it like, okay, well, what did Tua do? He made a Pro Bowl, sure, but Tyler Huntley made the Pro Bowl too, right? So now the Pro Bowl don't even mean what it used to mean. They don't have any accolades. Jordan Love plays 1 year. He's above average. He takes his team. to, a nice little deep playoff run. And all of a sudden you're like, yep, make him the highest paid quarterback of all time. It doesn't make sense to me. And I find it extremely foolish because I think you'll get burned more times than you'll get hit on that. Because it's like you said with the Bills. Look at the Dolphins right now. If Tua gets another concussion, that's done. Now you got to pay this guy because he's going to be forced to medically retire. Now you're going to be forced to pay this guy $156 million guaranteed. And then you look at the Cowboys. You just paid Dak all this money. He gets 240 million, I think, and 231 of that is guaranteed. Now you got to go pay CD. Then they go and pay CD. And now you got to pay Mike Parsons. Where does that leave money for anybody else? So the whole wide receiver one extreme payment plan with the extreme QB payment plan, it's nuts. And we're it's like inflation is just going crazy. You're paying for a quarterback just because he's above average. And that just goes to tell you how bad the QB market is right now. That teams feel like we have to pay $200 million to a guy that probably in the grand scheme of quarterbacking isn't that great, but he's a top 10 quarterback right now. And oh my goodness, the Saints look like thieves right now because I know we talk about Derek Carr's contract, but Derek Carr at this point, he's not even in the top 15 in terms of contract. So I'm with you, man. And then, hell, Atlanta gave mid 30s quarterback coming off of an Achilles rupture, and I had that injury last year, so I know all about it. A 36-year-old quarterback with an Achilles rupture, you gave him $180 million. I mean, what? It doesn't make sense. So I agree with you, man. I don't want to get too far into it. I just say these quarterbacks don't deserve it. I can't say that. That made me sound like a hater. Does that make me sound like a hater, Dave? That makes me sound like a hater.
I mean, it's a little bit hating because it's like you want them to do well, you want them to get their money, but if you want to win as a team, you're completely correct. And I was looking at it. If you look at a bunch of the recent Super Bowls, so last year you had the Chiefs win it, and of course, like you had Mahomes. And like the year before is like the Chiefs win it with Mahomes. But if you look at the teams that are making it, you've got the Eagles making it with Jalen Hurts on a cheap contract. You got when the Bengals played the Rams. Yeah, Stafford actually had a big deal, but the Bengals made it with a rookie scale contract. The Bucks Chiefs Super Bowl. Brady's on a cheap contract. I know that's a special situation, but the Chiefs make it with a rookie scale contract. Patrick Mahomes, I believe, or no, that might have been the first year that he was paid. But either way,
It didn't kick in yet. The
yeah, it
49ers,
did kick
you see
in.
what Brock Purdy's making? Nothing.
Nothing. Year before, the Chiefs play the 49ers. Both quarterbacks way under market value or rookie scale. Year before, you have the Rams make it with Jared Goff on his rookie scale contract, while you have the Patriots make it with Brady taking a pay cut, which I know that's a special situation since no one else would take a pay cut, partly because of the NFLPA wanting the deals to keep rising. But year before that, you've got Carson Wentz and Nick Foles leading you to a Super Bowl victory. See, all these teams that make it, it really just shows having a whole team, or like to make a Super Bowl, the best thing that you can do is have a rookie scale quarterback who's good. Doesn't have to be elite, just be good, because then the rest of your team around it is able to be filled out. Otherwise, unless you're the Chiefs, where Mahomes can do it with no receivers, or then go draft a receiver, you hit on a rookie in Rashee Rice. That's really the model that if you want to pay your quarterback, you got to have a top 5 guy, and he's got to be able to do it without an expensive receiving core. And that's going to be this model that leads teams to victory, I think, carrying on.
See, we keep talking about. I hate going back to the Saints, but not if you look at it, right? Chris Olave, rookie wide receiver deal. He's going to be paying big money when his time comes. Rasheed, I'm sitting here talking about Rasheed Rice. Rashid Shaheed. There's a lot of Rasheeds right now. Rashid Shaheed, he's on a extremely cheap, uh, was it undrafted free agent tender? Extremely cheap. It's like what 2 mil, something like that. And then Derek Carr isn't even a top 15 paid quarterback anymore, under market value. So everything that you said with these teams that have won the Super Bowl and went to Super Bowl. I mean, right now the Saints kind of fit the bill. Cheaper quarterback that's playing good. He ain't losing your games. You got a wide receiver that you hit on in the draft who's really good, and then you found you another gem. for a wide receiver too, undrafted at that. So, I mean, if history repeats itself, right?
Where have the Saints emphasized their investments? They emphasized it on defense, and then they go draft an offensive tackle. That's the model that you have to have. You got to build the team around the quarterback. And I mean, we'll talk about this right now. Look at a team that didn't do that, the Panthers. The Panthers go and trade everything to go get their hopefully franchise quarterback. They draft Bryce Young and bring him into a terrible situation. He has no weapons. He has a bad O line. He's not able to work a miracle, and I don't think he's a very good quarterback in general. Since you'd see him missing throws that he should have hit. He's just panicked when he's under pressure. But there's no way he was going to succeed with having no weapons around him. Just a terrible situation. Meanwhile, you look at the inverse. C.J. Stroud, um, he's in a tremendous situation because they already had pieces around him. They had some receivers that went and built up a defense around him. He's able to succeed. The Bears with Caleb, yes, he's struggling so far, but I think he's going to be very successful if he's a at all decent quarterback because they already have one of the top defenses in the league. Their O-line still needs help, and that needs to be addressed, but they have receivers around the rookie. They have weapons. If they can fix their play calling and then tweak the O-line, that's a team that's in a position to be good because they've built the complementary pieces. Panthers, they throw their rookie quarterback into the fire. He's already benched year two.
No, for those who don't know, right? So first of all, Dave, you're just speaking the hottest of hottest facts right now. You are. Because if you look at the trade, I have it pulled up. So they basically got so number one, you gotta start from the beginning. You get rid of Christian McCaffrey. Right there, you're telling everyone in the league, hey, fire sale, we're trying to rebuild. Great. I'm not upset with the decision. I'm extremely happy with the decision. I don't have to play Christian McCaffrey twice a year anymore. Fantastic. Then you get rid of Brian Burns. Once again, great. I don't have to play Brian Burns twice a year anymore. And you trade. So most of the trades kind of going through now. There's still one first round pick that hasn't been used yet, but you basically gave them uh two or three. You gave them three first round picks or four rather. So this ends up like this: the Panthers basically traded Caleb Williams, Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, the 2023 top 10 first pick, a 2023 round two pick, 2024 round one pick, which ended up being pick one, and then the 2025 round one pick, which will probably be number one. So you essentially gave him three or four number one picks, Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore, and all you got was 1 year of Brian Burns. You got DJ Johnson, who was ranked last in PFF edge grades. You got Bryce Young, who has not shown you anything, and two round five picks. I mean, you want to talk about an absolute disaster class on how to run a team? That is what they're going to put in the textbooks. If you want to be a GM one day, you're going to sit in GM class or whatever, and they're going to say, well, let's bring up the 2023 and 2024 and 2022 Panthers on what not to do. And this is exactly that. Now, it's like you said, the inverse of that, right? You have the Texans. They get two top five picks, or was it like two top 10 picks for sure? And you go draft Will Anderson, who's a stud on defense. So you help your defense there. You get you a new coach, D'Amico Ryans, and then you draft CJ Stroud. And then you have Nico Collins, you hit on that draft. You go now you trade for Stephon Diggs and you sign Joe Mixon. You just gave your quarterback who's on a cheap deal all of these weapons. And on top of that, you hit on Tank Dell also in the later rounds. And then now if you look at the Bears, right? It's like what you said. They have DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. You use a number 9 pick to draft Rome Odunze. And you have who's their running back? I forget.
DeAndre Swift.
DeAndre Swift. You're gonna sign DeAndre Swift from the Eagles, and he was a good back with the Eagles. I mean, I've always been under the impression, at least I say always, but at least for the last 6, 7, 8 years, you have to build around the quarterbacks. Like you said, Dave, you have to build around the quarterbacks. And I don't understand these teams that would try to go so top heavy with the quarterback and leave him with nothing. And I think it's extremely unfair for Bryce Young because I mean, we're talking about his wide receiver one last year was Adam Thielen, a 30-something-year-old receiver, and his wide receiver two is Terrace Marshall, who got waived this season. His O line is awful. You draft the kid from NC State. Um, I always mispronounce his name, so I ain't even gonna try it. And he doesn't look that great either. Um, and your defense is a shell of what it was. Obviously, you get rid of your pieces there. JC Horn, he doesn't look that great either. So you're missing in the draft. So when you just combine the combination of missing in the draft and over trading, you're gonna destine yourself to eternal hell. They're not in purgatory, they are in hell. They have assets that are still going out to other teams. Everywhere else, I'm gonna even say this. Sam Darnold just beat the 49ers as a starting quarterback. And Baker Mayfield has been thriving. He got himself a new contract, $100 million contract with the Buccaneers, a
And that's
division
a
rival.
top five quarterback in the league, as Preston would say.
See, exactly. So they had both these quarterbacks on roster, and look at what happened. So it's just it's really a tale of two stories, right? Because people will always say, okay, it's important to go and do a rebuild. Well, this is the side of the rebuild that's tough because sometimes you may not ever get out of the rebuild. Kind of like the Browns, right? Back in the day. They just kept, and I always say the Browns' biggest issue back then, they drafted a damn quarterback every single year in the first round. That's your problem. Stop giving up on your guys that you draft in the first round to be quarterback after a year or two when your team is so bad that you're picking top three every year. That's so unfair. They have no weapons on offense, and their defense sucks. And yet, you tell them, hey, we're going to fire this coach that you learned with already, right, for a year. We're going to fire him. Now you're going to learn with a new coach. And on top of that, we're still not going to give you any weapons, and we're still not going to give you a defense. We're still not going to give you no line. But if you don't do good this year, we're going to draft another quarterback. That doesn't make sense to me. And that's kind of what the Panthers seem like they're going to do. Yes, I understand there is a point where you have to pull the plug before you get too far down the rabbit hole, and you just got to chalk it up to you got to charge it to the game. Take your L. Take your losses. That's the folly of the NFL, knowing when to pull your cards. Otherwise, you just get too far down. So for the Panthers, I do feel bad for Bryce Young. I feel like because he's had three offensive coordinators in 2 years. He has no online. He's 5'10", so that people say that's hindering him. His defense is extremely suspect, and his best receiver right now is who? A rookie, Xavier Legette, who they're not even really utilizing like that, or Deontay Johnson, who isn't getting the target share that he was getting with the Steelers under at least an OC that seems like he had a pulse. So this is just all bad for the Panthers. We're talking Charlotte 2012 Charlotte Bobcats level of bad. This is awful. If this team wins a game within the next 2 years, I would be thoroughly surprised. I would. And shout out to Andy Dalton. He is the biggest dirty Mac in the league. He just knows. He has a nose for where to go. Because how you put yourself in position with the Saints to go and start, and then you go to the Panthers, and then once again you find yourself in a position to start. I mean, I don't think Andy Dalton's going to do it. I think Andy Dalton will score maybe a few more points, but I don't think it's going to help anything in the grand scheme of things. And ultimately, what you just did, you just completely killed your first pick in the draft QB's confidence. Bryce Young's confidence is going to be dead. So if there was any chance of him being good, I feel like you just threw it out the window. So to me, the only solution is you got to trade Bryce Young. Try to get some assets back. You just sat here and said you giving up on him already after all the mismanagement that you did. Unfair to him, but that's what the game is. Unfortunately, it's not fair for everybody. Not everybody gets to be like CJ Stroud and Caleb Williams. Hell, he can go call Justin Fields. Justin Fields would be the first one to tell him, hey, man, I didn't get a good pull at the stick either. Because look at what they gave me. Yeah, they gave me DJ Moore, but that was about it. And they're giving Caleb Williams everything under the sun. And I'm here with the Steelers. I mean, obviously they're 2-0, so it ain't that bad. But I mean, you have to trade them. That's my take. Panthers suck. It's fun to see the Panthers suck. Cam Newton is visiting. That's the new news. They're visiting, I think, today or tomorrow. Maybe they sign Cam. I would love to see Cam start for that team. I think that would be fun. But I feel bad for Bryce Young. Um, David Tepper got to sell the damn team. He's
Well, yeah,
awful.
hey, that is what I wanted to get into because say what you want about the Panthers, they will never win anything as long as David Tepper's the owner. After losing this past weekend and the Jets winning, the Panthers now have the worst record in the NFL since Tepper purchased the team in 2018 at 31-70. They have lost more than double the amount of games that they have won. Now, if you want to go into some of the reason why, it's because he is the most impatient owner in the league by far. When he took over, he had Ron Rivera as his head coach. Fires him after 2 years, hires Matt Rule to a huge 7-year deal, paying him a ton of money. Fires him after 2 years. Brings in Frank Reich, fires him after 1 year. Now they bring in Dave Canales. I don't know how long he's going to last because they suck. They've already given up on Bryce Young, and they've got an impatient owner. If he gets fired, who's going to want to take that job where you've got no job security and are in a terrible organization? And that's not even the worst of it. If you look at their starting quarterbacks, we have it pulled up on the screen right now. In 2018, they had Cam Newton, Kyle Allen, and Taylor Heinicke as starters. The next year, they have Kyle Allen, Cam Newton, and Will Grier as starters. Notice how they have 3 different quarterbacks starting both those seasons. But then they move on from them because they suck. So they go get Teddy Bridgewater, think he's going to save the team. He doesn't. PJ Walker even gets a start that season. Then the next year, they're like, okay, well, he's not good. Let's go get Sam Darnold. He's going to save the team. Then realize that he doesn't. So they try Cam Newton. He doesn't work. They try PJ Walker. He gets 1 win. The next year, though, they're like, all right, Sam Darnold, we believe in him a bit. When they start him after Baker's, they believe in him a bit when they start him after Baker sucks. But then they give up on him too, go back to PJ Walker, just all these retread quarterbacks they have, just mixing people up. And then they're like, all right, you know what? We want our franchise guy. Let's trade our entire organization and get Bryce Young. And then they bench him after 1 season. It's just ridiculous how they have all these quarterbacks that they're cycling, all these coaches that they're cycling, because they have an owner that all he wants to do is win right now and doesn't realize that this isn't Madden. You have to actually build up a good team, build up a good foundation. You can't just do that overnight by going and getting some mediocre quarterback to go fill in or going and trading your entire organization to go get the number 1 overall pick and expect him to carry.
It seems like David Tepper is kind of taking bits and pieces from all of the strategies that we mentioned, right? Um, how we mentioned earlier, having a quarterback just be average or slightly above average while on a cheap deal, but having everyone else around on the team. But and then there's the other side of, oh, you're just paying players all this money. Well, it seems like he's just kind of pick and chooses in a weird way, and it's like I don't quite understand because with Brian Burns, right? You could have easily just paid Brian Burns, but they didn't. They didn't want to. You could have paid CMC. They said, nah, too expensive. Whatever. You could have paid DJ Moore. Nah, same story. So I'm a little confused. And it's not like they went and made this massive offseason spending spree like the Falcons did, right? So it just seems like a juxtaposition to me or an oxymoron. It's like you can't say that you want to win now and you're not trying to spend money or I mean the Rams traded their entire future in for like 10 years and they just had their first round pick since 2016 this year. That's how much of their future they traded away. They ended up with a Super Bowl though. So you can't be mad at that. And they spent money on a bigger time quarterback to go lead the way after they've already put a nice team in place. So David Tepper, I mean, not to mention David Tepper, excuse my language, he's an asshole. right? How many of these reports have we seen with David Tepper coming out where he's just a terrible person? And I mean, he says he has all this dirt on all these owners. He's just a nutcase. He's an awful owner in terms of football. He's an awful owner in terms of being a good person. And he's trying to stir the pot with all these other owners. And I'm actually really surprised that he hasn't been forced to sell the team so far. And
Well, the
you
thing
know,
is, it's so hard to force a guy to sell the team because, I mean, even Schneider in Washington was the worst person ever, did so many just terrible things, and it still took so much to get him to sell the team. But at the end of the day, the Panthers suck. Nobody gives a shit about them. Let's go to games that people do care about. The Bucks getting a win against the Lions on the road and proving that they're a team that might just be for real. What are your thoughts on that game?
no, obviously because they are, I wouldn't say not quite division rival. I know some Bucks fans gonna hate hearing that, but they are in the division. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. And maybe that's just me being just on my high horse because my team is scoring 40 points on everybody that they say, hey, go play. But I think right now the Lions are concerning to me and not in a good way. Um, because I feel like they're kind of getting in this situation where they have a lot of pieces, right? You have Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams is coming on. You have Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery. That's a lot of mouths to feed. And Dan Campbell wants to run the ball. And obviously, right, they have Sinead, what's the name? I always mix it up too. Uh, they're amazing offensive linemen that they drafted.
Panay
Nick
Sewell.
Hero, yeah, Panay Sewell. I mixed it up, but he's there too. So I mean, you have what you need, and that offense should be better. And then you have Ben Johnson, right? Who, of course, denied the Panthers job on multiple occasions, even though David Tepper said, "We'll make you the highest paid head coach." He's like, "I do not want to be part of that." So
And look how
shout out
smart
to
he
Ben.
was.
Yeah, look how smart. So shout out to Ben Johnson for not falling for that trap. Um, but that offense to me should be better. And I feel like they're kind of hamstringing themselves a little bit, trying to feed everybody. But at the same time, Sam Laporta has been kind of irrelevant these last 2 weeks. I mean, I think he's only caught the ball maybe 3 times this season. I mean, you're talking about a guy who was basically everyone agreed he was the best tight end in football last year. And he just can't get it going. It's like what you said earlier with the Bengals, right? Like, why is this taking you so long to get going? And considering how the offense looked last year, I don't think it should be taking this long. And we've seen this offense just kind of stall at odd times, even though it shouldn't. And I feel like this is a coaching thing because I think Dan Campbell he gets aggressive too much sometimes, and maybe he just focused too much on this run thing. I mean, you have Jameer Gibbs, who you drafted, and he's just intent on having David Montgomery run an entire series, and then the next series is Jameer Gibbs, and the next series is David Montgomery. I mean, what are we doing? Who's the guy? It's not like how the Saints use Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. No, he's just giving them whole series at a time. So I think this is more of a Lions issue than it's just the Bucks. The Bucks really just played a dirty, gritty game like they do because that's what Baker Mayfield is. He's a dirty, gritty quarterback. He's going to fight till the end. He's going to do everything. We've seen this guy drop his shoulder so many times to get a first down. He's going to do whatever he can, and that's why people love him. And that entire energy has permeated throughout the entire Bucks organization. They are going to fight hard. They are. And Todd Bowles is no slouch at DC. His defensive schemes are, I would like to put it on the level of Steve Spagnolia's right now or Dennis Allen's. Like he will have a good scheme to stop you, even when his players may not be the best. Because on that defense, there's not really any super featured player. I mean, outside of a couple, but it's a good win for the Bucks. If I'm the Bucks, I'm happy. because you just beat a team that was in the playoffs last year, and also a team that people say is contending, and you do it on the road. If I'm the Lions, I would have to look at some things, but I'm not freaking out. It's game two, cleanest season left, but I think that the Bucks will kind of come back to earth. I wouldn't even say come back. They're not really off earth. I just think they'll make a few mistakes here and there and lose a couple games.
Well, I'll say I actually disagree with you a little bit on the Bucks. Now, Baker Mayfield, he's a good quarterback. He might not be top five like Preston likes to say, but he's a good quarterback on a relatively cheap deal. And the result is they have weapons around him. They have Mike Evans. They have Chris Godwin. They have Jalen McMillan, who's looking good on the outside. Running backs, they're a bit lacking there, but they have a team around him. They've been able to invest in
Oh,
their
don't
defense.
disrespect Rashad White. Rashad White is a very good back. I'm telling you,
I
very good
I
back.
completely disagree on Rashad White. He is one of the least efficient runners. In fact, I'll go pull it up right now. His stats. He
2.6
had
yards per
one,
carry this year.
1.8 yards per carry last game. If you look at his career
Impressive.
stats right here, 2023, 3.6 yards per carry. 2022, 3.7 yards per carry. He is the definition of a jag. I mean, if he's even that, I think he might be below replacement level, but he's all that they have running the ball.
I mean, they're not a running team.
They're
So I
not.
mean, I don't expect him. I like him in the passing game. He's a pretty good receiving back,
I
in my
agree, and
opinion.
that's a,
And
they need a they need a Mark Ingram type back to go pair with him who can go run the ball for you and then let him go in the passing game.
maybe trade for David Montgomery. I don't know. Give Jameer
But
Gibbs full reign of that offense like he should have.
anyway, going back to the Lions, one thing I just want to say, Sam Laporta, everyone, especially in fantasy, they're concerned about him. I think he'll still be fine. The first two games of the season, the Lions played teams that really like to blitz and get after the quarterback. Whenever Jared Goff gets blitzed, his eyes immediately go to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, you'd think that the tight end might be the bit of the safety blanket, but no. For Goff, if he's blitzed, he's always going to look to Amon-Ra. And you saw that last game. He had 19 targets against a blitz-heavy team, 11 receptions, 119 yards. But going back to the
And got him hurt. And
and
got
got
him
him
hurt.
hurt. But going back to the struggles that they had, I think this is something I said earlier on when we were previewing week one. The big thing for the Lions this season is they're a good team now, and that's one of the hardest things to be in the league is a good team. Last year they're the underdogs, and they could have that underdog mentality and say, hey, we're overachieving, we're gonna fight, we're gonna go bite the kneecaps off of our opponents, do whatever it takes. Well, they made the NFC Championship game. Now they're a team that's expected to get back again, expected to be that good. And that's one of the hardest things, getting the locker room to stay bought in, stay focused, and not get too big of an ego. It's keeping their ego in check, not getting too low, not get after a loss, not getting too high after a win. It's tough, especially with a lot of the young guys they have, and that's going to be a challenge that they have. But as for this game, they really just outdid themselves coaching wise. They overthought the game. The Bucks are known for having a really good run defense. Their secondary is a bit of their question mark. The Lions took that too far because they're a team that they can probably run the ball against anyone. Instead, they had Jared Goff throw the ball 55 times. It's
That's a recipe
ridiculous.
for disaster.
It is. The result was 307 yards, 5.6 yards per attempt, no touchdowns, two picks. Jared Goff is a good quarterback. He's not a quarterback that you want throwing the ball 55 times. And they got away from their run game, which actually was working out pretty well. Jameer Gibbs averaged 6.5 yards per carry. David Montgomery struggled a bit more, but he did get into the end zone. They're a team that they have such a good O-line and a pair of good running backs. They can run the ball against anyone, and they got scared of the Bucks. And they saw on their scouting report really good run defense, kind of question marks in the secondary. They're like, well, I guess we can't run the ball against them, and we got to throw it. That's something that they're going to have to adjust. Don't overthink yourselves. Know what you're good at. And going back to the Gibbs-Montgomery, Gibbs is definitely the better back out of the two, but I kind of like the way that they use them with how they rotate. Maybe it doesn't have to be a drive each like they do, but getting them both rotated in, if that bruising O-line, they didn't do it last game. But if you pound the rock and run the ball 50 times and throw it 27 times instead of throwing it 55 times, run it 27 like they did this game. With that O line you have, you're going to wear teams down. And if you rotate both those backs in, you're going to have a fresh back. And you saw that in their win against the Rams. The way they rotated the backs, Montgomery comes in overtime, and he's just able to run all over a tired Rams defense. Unfortunately for me, as I played him in fantasy, and he did nothing before that. But they need to just stick to their game plan. And yes, there's going to be times you're going to have Jared Goff swing it around and do some more, but don't have him throwing the ball 55 times. Trust in what your team's identity is that's gotten you that far.
And don't kill your wide receiver run by throwing the ball to him 19 damn times. Don't do that. We've seen Malik Neighbors with almost that amount of targets. Luckily, he didn't get hurt, but not really ideal whenever you're throwing to a single guy that many times. But I agree. I feel like they could be a boom and zoom, like how the 2017 Saints ran Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. I feel like that was one of the most perfect uses of two good running backs on a team that I've ever seen. And just once again, I'm gonna go back to the Saints. I keep doing it. I can't help it.
Yeah, I was
But
about to say, drinking game. Take a shot every time Calvin mentions the Saints.
Clint Kubiak went in the game beforehand. It's the Dallas Cowboys. Everybody's talking, Dallas Cowboys defense. It's so good. And he said, well, we're going to run the ball down their throat. We're going to do it. He said that before the game. And he did not get off that game plan. Now, yeah, he sling the rock. Derek Carr is only throwing the ball like what, 20-ish times a game, 19 times a game, even lower than that sometimes. Hey, that is that is the way that the line should be running this. So I'm with you on that. I ain't gonna mention the Saints again. Probably, I don't know. So if y'all play that drinking game, y'all are probably
Yeah, he will mention
butt
them.
naked
So
in a dumpster somewhere. But the lines are figured out. The Bucks, I ain't bought in yet.
see, I think the Bucks are good, and I think that NFC South is the most underrated division. Everyone talking about how bad it is. Well, Saints look good, and I think the Bucks are a good team too. Unfortunately, because that means we're gonna have some competition. And I mean, the Falcons, I don't think they're very good, but we might be competing with them a little bit now since the
Ooh,
Eagles decided to blow it against them, giving them a
transition,
free win.
transition. Look at that transition. Eagles, Falcons. That's what we on. Let me hear it, Dave.
I mean, the Eagles, they're not a good team. I'll say that right now. They are not a good team. Last season, the back half of the season, they were the worst or second worst team in the league. They just were losing games that they should have won. They were losing games they should have lost. Like, they just looked bad. And it seemed like they almost were figured out on offense. Jalen Hurts was trying to do too much, and they just couldn't make it work. Bring in Saquon Barkley, and it definitely gave them a big boost. It definitely helped them out a lot, seeing what he could do, besides when he's dropping passes. But it's still the same story. Jalen Hurts doesn't really do that much. They're missing AJ Brown, which definitely hurts, but their offense just isn't really all there, and their defense also, it's not that good. 2 years ago, it was a great defense. Last year, it was a bad defense. This year, it's still not really there, and I think they're a team that they need to figure something out fast because Sirianni, he took them to a Super Bowl like Zach Taylor did. But other than that, I'm not so sure about him either. He's a guy that looked like he was going to be this great coach and have them firing, but they've fallen apart and haven't been able to adapt. Might be a bit of a Bengals situation going on there.
Oh, Eagles being the Bengals? That's the hot take? Oh, mm. Now you say that, I'm picking up what you're putting down. I see it. I see it. Now, I got a good friend that plays for the Eagles, so I'm not gonna just come on here and bash him as much as I would like to. Um, but I agree. I thinking about it more, I agree because looking at it, that team on paper, kind of like the Bengals, should just be better, right? And I mean, their defense is they still have a lot of the pieces really from when they were good. I say a lot, but yeah, obviously, time goes on, but they still have pieces from when the defense was good. I don't think Darius Slay's a bad corner. by no stretch of imagination. I think their D line is supposed to be still really strong. Jordan Davis, he got benched last game because he missed a team meeting or team activity, or he was late to it rather. So that's why he didn't really play. Um, the D line, I mean, that's strong suit of that defense. I mean, Zach Bond is averaging like 10 tackles a game. He had 15 week one, and how many do you have this game? 10, 11, somewhere, something like that. 12, I think. They're using Zach Bond in a way the Saints should be using Zach Bond, low key, low key, low key. But Zach Bond's tackles are coming like 6 yards, like past the line of scrimmage. So like not ideal. Um, but Sirianni as a coach, I think just the culture that he's cultivated is kind of what's keeping him safe from having these discussions of is he a good coach or not. Because Zach Taylor, I think those questions can arise because he's not as personable. He doesn't have as much charisma as Nick Sirianni does, and he's certainly in the spotlight a lot less. And with that security guard, what's his name, Big D, whoever, I mean, all that stupid stuff going on last year. Jason Kelsey bringing notoriety to your team. The Eagles are confusing. I mean, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, that should be, and Saquon, that should be a good team. But once again, another team that paid their quarterback way too much money. They fell for the trap. Oh, he took us to a Super Bowl. No, 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 no. Because what has he done before that? He's not that great of a thrower. When he gets pressured, he's not the best. He's just kind of a game man. He's a game manager plus. He can run okay, but since his injury, he's kind of not really run that much. And he's a tush push merchant. I said it. Um, and losing to the Falcons, I mean that's unacceptable for a team that's I think they're actually 2-10. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dave. 2-10 in their last 12.
I believe so. I was
So
pulling that up right now.
so I mean they are just continuing on what on what happened at the end of last year, and when you see a team collapse like that. I mean, obviously, the only thing you have to go to is coaching. I feel like no one's really talking about it. Now, I will say Sirianni did have a glimmering moment of hope for how good he can coach because 2 minutes, third and one, tush push situation. Falcons have three timeouts. The Falcons intentionally jump off sides. And for those who don't understand why that's important, you jump off sides because with a tush push, that's a high percentage play for the Eagles. They're probably getting that 1 yard, and if they don't get on that 1 yard, they're going to definitely get it on fourth down because Sirianni is definitely going to go for it on fourth down in this situation. So 2 attempts at tush push, you're going to get 1 yard, especially with the Falcons D line. Yeah. So Raheem Morris said, "Hey, we're going to jump off sides. We're going to save time." Why is that important? Well, you're basically saying, okay, you're going to get this yard anyway. So instead of running the third and one play and wasting a timeout, right? So now you have two timeouts, and now it's first and 10. So now you can only stop the clock after this first down. So now you have one, and then second down, you stop the clock. So third down, they can take a knee, waste 40 seconds, and now you're going to probably get the ball back with like 30 seconds or less, if that. So shout out to Nick Sirianni for saying, no, 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 no. We're going to decline this and we're going to run this play. We're not going to let you say, all right, take this first down so then you can run this ball and we can stop this clock 3 times. You kick us the ball back with about a minute and a half. So shout out there. But that's probably about it. I will question. I'm not gonna question. I'm not gonna question the Saquon call. I ain't even gonna talk about it. I'm gonna let you talk about that because I know you have an opinion on the Saquon call. So I'm gonna let you go ahead. I ain't even gonna get into it. I'm gonna let you have that.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, my bigger question is just with the Eagles as a whole. Because I'm just, I think you got to be out on the Eagles. Yes, they won last week, but this week they just go back into that same thing. It's like I was saying before, they went back to how they finished the season last year, just disappointing. So you can look at the Saquon call, you can look at any of this, but you got to look at it as the big picture as a whole. It all comes back to their offense just seems like I don't know if they're figured out. I don't know what they're if they just realized that teams realized, hey, they only do this, they get into these tush push situations, whatever you want to say. They just don't look like that threatening of an offense anymore. When they were one of the top offenses in the league, they were explosive. A.J. Brown making these explosive plays. Devontae Smith dominant. They could throw it to them. They could get the run game going with their O-line. You just don't have that threat anymore. And I don't know what the future holds for the Eagles, but the vibes that Sirianni has got that team is what's carrying. But how long is that going to last? They keep struggling. They need to figure it out. But going to the Falcons, I mean, do you really have any major takeaways from them from this game?
I mean, shout out to Kirk O'Chains for leading the game-winning drive. I mean, I'll give him his credit. He did do that.
Primetime
Um,
Kirk.
Prime time Kirk, the man, the myth, the legend. Uh, I mean, there's not really much that I can say. Um, they struggle with a team that you don't believe is good, so I think that just kind of says enough right there. They did enough to win. They made less mistakes. They kept their head in the game. Well, I say made less. They made less mistakes when it mattered, and just kept their nose to the grindstone, like what the Bucks do. Right? They just kept on fighting. They didn't give up. Got him a win. Snuck him a nice little win against what people think is a good team. Um, I wouldn't be firing the Super Bowl parade alarms if I'm Falcons fans for sure. Um, I just once again that the Falcons are a team. I don't buy into it. I don't buy into it. Justin Simmons doesn't look as good as I thought he was. I was one of the people that was upset that he went to the Falcons instead of the Saints. Calvin mentioned the Saints again. Take y'all shots. Um, but they did all that money spending in the offseason, and I think they fell for the fallacy, right? Of, oh, we're gonna spend this money, we're gonna try to compete. To them, I understand why they would go into win now mode, kind of, because I guess they figured the Saints would be weaker. They knew they figured the Bucks would be weaker, and they knew the Panthers suck. So no one really knows where this division's going. So they're like, all right, well, why don't we become the clear number ones? So I understand. But and plus the NFC is weak right now, so no better time than to try to win now than now. Um, so I get it. I think they'll fall flat on it. I don't think their coaching staff is good enough to do it. I don't think the combination of players. I compare them to the Lakers. The Lakers team building tactic, which is get players that have a name, get older players, and put them all together. It doesn't matter what the chemistry is. You just take these players that people know and you put them together. See what happens. Doesn't matter their age now or what they've done recently. Just put them together. See what happens. And that's what you got. Um, but Eagles got figured out. Like you said, it's not creative anymore. Um, they need to change that up. And the Falcons are probably going to win 9 games this year, which is good. That's good. But I think they'll fall into this trap of perpetually trying to win now and then just falling short every year. While the Eagles, they're probably going to be in this odd purgatory. Now, they do have a way to get out of purgatory, but they will have to make some tough decisions. But there is a way. They have pieces. They have a little bit of freedom. They're not completely in purgatory yet, but it's still early in the season. We'll see. Maybe they figure out. Maybe they get more creative. We'll see.
But yeah, I agree with you there. Um, I do. I mean, besides the fact that I just hate the Falcons winning anytime, as a Saints fan, I do hate that the Falcons got this win early because they're a team that they have a lot of new pieces. They have new quarterback, they have new offense, they have all this that they're trying to mesh together, as well as Kirk Cousins slowly getting healthier every week. They're a team that, whether or not they end up as a good team, which I think, like you said, they're going to be kind of one of those mediocre, hovering around 500, maybe finishing a bit over 500 teams, fighting for a wild card berth. But getting the win early is huge because they're a team that is going to take time to click, and as the season goes on, they'll get better. So being able to beat the Eagles early sucks because that's just a free win for them basically during their sucking part of the year. Hopefully they aren't able to get it all together, but it is positive momentum for them. But going to a completely different frame of mind, are the Vikings a legitimate team? They get the win at home against the 49ers. Yes, they don't have McCaffrey, but Jordan Mason's showing that anyone can fill in there with their own line. they don't come away with the victory. Vikings, with Sam Darnold at the helm, are now 2-0 as a team that everyone thought was dead because Sam Darnold was their starter.
Not buying it. Not buying it. I can't. I think they're a pretender. I think they're one of the pretender. They are one of the pretender 2-0 teams right now. Now, I'm not trying to discredit them, but we kind of know how Sam Darnold operates, right? Sam Darnold will go through these stretches or games where he does enough to win you games or he just plays great. And I mean, look, the Vikings, they have a great receiving core. Now, obviously, right, it's just Justin Jefferson right now. I think Jordan Addison's hurt. Um, what's this guy's name? Jalen Nair or something like that? I don't
Jalen
remember.
Naylor, who's
Yeah,
what he's
Jalen Naylor. I
year
got
is
mixed up
he
with
a
Jalen Rager.
second year? He's either in his second or third year. Had a decent college career at Michigan State, but
He's he's coming along. He looks like he's coming along right, kind of like this Jalen McMillan guy for the Bucks, right? Coming along, and I think he can kind of solidify himself as a good piece, or like this Andres Isovich guy, right, for the Bengals. Another guy rising up, right? Teams are going to start trying to find their pukas, and I feel like they may have potentially found one. He got a good target share, um, and especially I mean, he's a product of opportunity, right? I mean, T.J. Hawkinson's down for the count. Jordan Addison's out. Justin Jefferson goes down in that game. I mean, somebody's got to step up, right? So good on the Vikings for figuring this out. I think you have to really look at this game and ask yourself, what the hell is going on with the 49ers? Because that's one of those trap games. That is the quintessential trap game for the 49ers. Or maybe that's supposed to be a tune-up game for the 49ers, and that's what makes it a trap. And they fell for the trap. They lost. And I get it. No Debo, no Christian McCaffrey, but
well,
you
no,
have Kyle
they had
Shanahan.
Debo.
He played this week?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
he
had eight
did. He
receptions
did.
for 110. He went
I
off.
forgot. I forgot that he played. My fault. I was so locked in on fantasy. I got too many damn teams in fantasy. I'll be locked in. Everybody hurt. I'll be seeing the O and the Q next to everybody's name. I'll be thinking
Oh man,
everybody
I
else
feel
playing.
that. In
But
my
shout out to Debo for playing.
on my team in this DBG league, which we still need to get that draft episode out. My running backs were my first two picks at running back were Christian McCaffrey and Isaiah Pacheco. Now I got Jordan Mason before McCaffrey was ruled out, so I was able to slide him in. But it's a rough go at running back for me right now, and I'm feeling all these injuries that were. Which
Rest
I
in
think goes
peace.
back
Rest
to
in
we
peace to
talked about
David.
this last week. All these teams that don't play anyone preseason, you don't have these players in game shape, ready for football speed, and you're seeing all these injuries. But anyway, go back to what you're saying.
Soft tissue injuries. The most irritating injuries on the planet, mind you. And they linger for a while. Um, but yeah, so Debo played. So you had Debo. You really had most of your weapons, minus CMC. I mean, your defense is still good, right? Fred Warner is still looking like the best linebacker in all of football. And you lose. I mean, you lose to a depleted Vikings team at that. A Vikings team that, they draft JJ McCarthy. JJ McCarthy's off season, then everybody just kind of throws their hands up in the air. It's like, oh, well, we have no TJ Hawkinson. Uh we have no JJ McCarthy, and Jordan Addison looks like he's gonna be out for a little minute. He got his little thing going on with his situation. So they're just kind of along for the ride, Vikings fans and Vikings front office people. It's like, hey, we don't know what's gonna happen, but hey, let's just play hard and see what's up. And I think that's just all it was. They just played harder. I think, and look, you see it, right? You see it at every level of the game where much better teams, because don't get me wrong, this does not mean the 49ers are bad. The 49ers are still the better team. But here's something that my head coach here in Northwest Missouri State says. He says in the first couple of weeks of football, the best team doesn't win the game. It's the team that executes the best. And I feel like because it's a little early on, maybe the 49ers just kind of got into this mode of, hey, we were in the Super Bowl last year, we're upset. They're kind of looking ahead a little too much. And they just overlooked the team that's right in front of them this week, being the Vikings. I'm not going to say they were unprepared, but they got punched in the mouth. And it happens. these type of games are needed for teams like the 49ers if they want to go back to the Super Bowl because you got to humble yourself at all times. And this is a humbling game. You need this type of game. So I actually think that this game will end up being a very positive outcome long term for the 49ers. Because me being a player myself, I understand what these games do for your mental, right? For your mentality. You get punched in the mouth because you were overlooking them a little bit. Oh, they're a bad team. We're the 49ers. We went to Super Bowl. We should beat them. We have Kyle Shanahan. We have all these weapons. We're gonna walk out with our boom box with Trent Williams and Debo front and center. We're gonna walk in here, whoop some ass, and leave. Well, no, no, no. The Vikings, there is no there's nothing more dangerous in the NFL than a team that has nothing to play for, or a team that thinks they have nothing to play for. Because at the end of the day, they're gonna play to just mess up what you have going on. And that's what you got. So 49ers, look in the mirror, humble yourself a little bit. Like I said, I think they just was looking too far down the road. They're just too focused on the playoffs, too focused on making it back to the Super Bowl, and they just missed what's in front of them, and they trip over it. But if you just pull your eyes down a little bit, look at next week's game, and then the game after that, 1 week at a time, I think they'll be all right.
Well, I mean, you really hit the nail on the head because the biggest issue with them was just like getting the job done. Because the game it was a really close game. 403 total yards for the Vikings, 399 total yards for the 49ers. They're separated by 4 yards. Difference was third downs. Vikings were 7 for 12 on third down. They were converting. 49ers weren't getting them off the field. On offense, the 49ers go 2 for 10 on third down. Not going to win very many games, converting 20% of your third downs. That's something that they just got to figure out these kinks now, get it going. They've got their early loss to humble them, but don't let that be a trend that continues. Seahawks are 2-0. Now, I don't know how good of a team they are. They've kind of had a bit of an easier start to the season playing the Broncos and the Patriots, but wins are wins. You want to make sure you keep pace. And also, I mean, the 49ers are a team. They should be in contention for that number one seed in that bye. So you got to lock in early. You got to keep pace. But looking at the Vikings, I kind of disagree with you. I don't think the Vikings are a great team, but I think that they, at the very least, will be fighting for a playoff spot. And I think Sam Darnold is a big reason why. He's a mediocre quarterback. You could say that he's above average, but he's in a good system with good receivers. He's got a good tight end that'll be coming back at some point this season in Hawkinson. He's got a lot of weapons. I think that they are better off, as messed up as this might sound, they're better off with J.J. McCarthy being out for the season for this season's success than if he was healthy. Because I think they'd probably be at best 1-1, probably 0-2 if J.J. McCarthy was healthy. Just having a rookie quarterback coming in, having to teach him the offense, get him into NFL readiness, and also the fact that there's a lot of question marks with him. Yes, he has a lot of talent and tools, but didn't really do much passing in that Michigan offense under Harbaugh. So Darnold comes in, you know what you're going to get out of him, but with the weapons they have, that's enough to get the job done. If their defense can keep playing this well and can shut down teams like the 49ers, they might actually be a playoff threat. And I think that's going to be the bigger takeaway, more so than Sam Darnold, how the defense played against this 49ers team.
So if you think that they are a playoff team, whose spot are they taking? The Eagles? Hey, that's a thought. So you said the Eagles aren't a good team. Do you think the Vikings are better than the Eagles?
I mean, on paper, the Eagles are a much better team than the Vikings, but the Vikings, I think, I don't know if I'll say better coach team, but at least their scheme is more intact at this point. And the bar is a lot lower with making the playoffs now with that extra wild card spot. They're also in a division where it might be a bit more open than they thought it was. There's a lot of tough teams, but they're all kind of in a similar spot to each other. A bunch of teams that can beat up on each other, and it's going to be whoever wins those divisional games is going to be the team that comes out, because the Lions, on paper, they're by far the best team in the division. They just lost this week to the Bucs. They've got to make sure they have things figured out. Don't try and outthink themselves and throw the ball 55 times with Jared Goff. But the Packers, they're missing Jordan Love for a little while. Bears are still trying to figure it out with a rookie quarterback. You've got a lot of good teams in that division. I think the Lions still are the team that comes out and wins it, but it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. Vikings have a bit of a head start, but it doesn't really mean much just being 2-0, like I was saying with the Seahawks. But at the same time, you've got I wouldn't say necessarily, I think it's probably the toughest division, but all the teams are so similar and are going to beat each other up that there'll be opportunities where if they're able to pick up wins against the Lions in an upset, it's going to be tough. But if they're able to pick up one or two wins, even if they just split, maybe the Lions go drop a game to the Packers. Maybe they drop a game to the Bears. All of a sudden, it'll be a bit open. So I'm at least saying there's that opportunity. And their defense, I mean, they held the 49ers to 17 points, 2 for 10 on third downs. That's a really good performance against a top offense. If they can do that and Sam Darnold can just keep being a game manager like he has been and doing enough, they're definitely going to be in the push, whether it's in the division if the Lions slip up or if teams, for the wild card, they're competing with teams like the Eagles, competing with teams like the Bucks, who you aren't high on, competing with teams like maybe the Falcons make a push for there. Maybe the Cardinals honestly make a push for the wild card with how good they look this week against the Rams. But I mean that game, I don't know how much you can take away from that because Cardinals looked really good, so you got to give them props. But Rams are in shambles right now. I mean, it's week 2 and their entire team is injured. What's happening there? But the NFC is wide open this year, and the Vikings definitely have a chance to make a push if they keep playing like this.
You said something that I kind of want to kind of harp on, and it was something that before you said, I was kind of gonna, I was culminating the thought of how to say it, but with the Vikings, they are a team, and really this goes for all the NFL. It's about stealing wins. It's not necessarily. I mean, look, obviously, like I said earlier, right? Sometimes the best team doesn't win, right? You just execute it better. That doesn't mean you're a better team. Doesn't mean you're worse. Well, I think the Saints are just the best team in the league. I'm just kidding. Once again, take a drink. I said it again. Um, but still, 40 points on everybody we play. That's something else. That's hard to do in the NFL. Period. But anyway,
We're
stealing
going to the
wins. You
bowl.
want to go into the bowl, man. But hey, you want to steal wins. You want to steal wins because how many times have we seen, damn it, Dave, the Saints? How many times have we seen the Saints lose a game that they wasn't supposed to lose, and then later down the season, now we're fighting with a tiebreaker situation, a three-way tie between the Falcons, the Bucks, and us, and we end up coming out as losers in that because we lost the game early in the season that we wasn't supposed to lose. We lost the game in the middle season that we wasn't supposed to lose. We didn't handle business here. We slipped up in this game, and if we just would have won one game, one of those games that we had, like I'll use the Green Bay game last year. That game was won for us. It was, and then we just fell flat in the second half. And if we won that game, we would have won the division, I think. So it's the NFL, there's a lot more parity in the NFL that people give it credit for because you always see things like this early in the season where you don't think it matters, but it does. We don't know. Maybe the Vikings will have just one more win because they beat the 49ers. Maybe the 49ers lose out to maybe Seattle or the Cardinals, whoever in their division because they lost the game to the Vikings. And I mean, it's little things like that that we see all the time in the NFL. And it's like what you said with the Falcons. They got an early win against a team that people say are contenders in the Eagles. And it is frustrating because that team is nowhere near their final potential spot yet. They're still trying to figure their pieces out. They don't have it together yet, and they just stole a win against a team that's supposed to have it figured out. And so the Vikings, they're not supposed to have it figured out. They're injured, they're beat up, battered, and they just stole a win against a team that's really just missing, a few pieces, but mostly Chris McCaffrey. And that's going to matter later on in the season. I think that the games that I just mentioned, I think you'll see that come into play later. And even what you said with the NFC North, right? It's like the NFC South. The NFC South, everyone's like, "Oh, it's the worst league in football right now." Well, the NFC South just beat the Cowboys, they just beat the Eagles, and they just beat the Lions. Those are 3 teams that were in the playoffs last year. So the worst league that, the supposed worst league in football or worst division in football beat three playoff teams in the NFC last year. So these games matter, even though it's early. And I feel like this can either be a big win later down the line for Vikings because, like you said, right, the Packers probably going to lose a couple of these games, next couple of games. They don't have Jordan Love. They got to figure that out. I mean, sure, they pull one out with Malik Woods, but whatever. And then the Lions, they trip up again. See what happens there. And then what happens when Caleb Williams and crew figure it out? Let's say week 6, week 7, or maybe I don't know where their bye is, but let's say then or around that time. What if they figure it out and they start rattling off a bunch of wins? I mean, it's nice to get to a fast start, and I think, like you said with Seattle, they put themselves in that position, going 2-0, and they're just kind of a lullaby team right now. They are not great, they're not bad, but they're winning games, and they're not winning in a way that's like, oh, we got to be worried about them. They're just winning games, and we know they're a decent team. They got good players, good defense, good offense. He's a steady hand. You're captain in the ship, and then you got the Cardinals. I love what I'm seeing from Kyler Murray right now. He looks poised. Now, Black Ops 6 is coming out in October. So maybe they will crash and burn once Black Ops 6 comes out. But
Bench
right
all
now,
your Cardinals that week.
literally, hey, I have Kyler Murray on one of my teams starting, I think in 2 leagues. I know what to do when when Black Ops 6 comes out. So, but what if they figured out? Because I actually had a hot take that I think Kyler Murray will finish top 5 in MVP voting. And I don't think he's proven me wrong so far, honestly. Um, so what have they figured out? Now you start to see, a little more action that makes the 49ers a little uncomfortable. So it's about stealing wins. All these teams I mentioned that lost when they wasn't supposed to, gotta figure it out. Look in the mirror, calm yourself down, come back to earth. But shout out to the Vikings for sneaking a free win. I call it a free win. I know it's not free, but it's a free win because you was not supposed to win that, but you did. I'm never giving the Falcons a shout out. They don't get a shout out. You got lucky. That's what I'm gonna put that on. Um, yeah, man. Stealing wins. It's very important.
And that's the thing. Look, it's week 2. You can have takeaways from teams. You can have takeaways from how a team's performing, but there's a lot that's going to happen as the season goes on. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be teams clicking. There's going to be teams falling apart. You can't overreact to teams' performances. You can take away, hey, this team looks good. I like what they're doing. I like this. With the Saints, as we like to keep mentioning, you can take away, I like how this new offense looks. It's completely different from last year. It looks like a team that's showing improvement. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing that you want to take away early season are wins. You'd rather win a game ugly than go lose pretty. Go lose in a shootout where you looked great and any other day you would have won, but you lost. Well, no, you take that ugly win any time of the day early in the season because it's about building that foundation. All of these wins matter so much when you get later in the season, and whether you're fighting to win your division or be a wild card team, whether you're fighting to make the playoffs at all, whether you're fighting for that one bye that you have, getting an early win against the team that you probably should beat is huge. And on the flip side, stealing a win, and maybe we'll look back on this and the Vikings are a good team and this wasn't them stealing a win. But if this is them stealing a win right here, this could be the difference, this one game between them making the playoffs and missing it, or winning their division and being a wild card team. And that's the biggest thing you have to take away. Now, we wanted to touch on the Texans-Bears game, Sunday Night Football. We've been yapping for a while, so we need to get out of here. I think we'll just have some brief thoughts on that. We've kind of talked a little bit about it. I mean, the Bears with Caleb Williams, their offense isn't there yet, but I think they're one of those teams that could come on. I'm a bit concerned about their offense and their play calling, just because it's looked questionable to start the season, and they go in and they bring in an offensive coordinator who was with the Seahawks last year. I forget his name, but he struggled last year with the Seahawks, and they go kind of clean house there. Bears bring him in, and it's kind of a lot of the same. They don't really look great. Their interior O line is also a big problem. They're not going to be able to run the ball against most teams because of that, and it's going to put some more pressure on Caleb. I will give him a lot of credit. He is so good in the pocket at evading sacks, but I think if they can get their play calling figured out, if they can get that interior O line to step up a bit, their defense is great. Texans have a really good offense with C.J. Stroud. They shut them down. Their defense last season finished this season as the best defense in the league the last 5, 6 weeks. They're one of those teams that's going to be a thorn in other and opponents' sides. So they showed it against the Texans, almost sneaking away with a win. But what are your thoughts, Calvin, before we get out of here?
Um, I wouldn't be worried if I'm a Bears fan, right? Rookie quarterback, but your rookie quarterback is not in a position that your former rookie quarterback Justin Fields was in. He has weapons, and you at least put forth some effort. Um, he has essentially three wide receiver ones, right? Keenan's a wide receiver one. Roma Dunze has potential to be a wide receiver one, and he was a wide receiver one back in college. And DJ Moore is a receiver one. So, and look, you have DeAndre Swift. He's no slouch either, right? So he has pieces, and yeah, it puts a lot of pressure on him because I think this offense is definitely more tailored to passing the ball as it should, as it's constructed. But I wouldn't worry. It's like what you said. The defense was the best defense in the NFL for the last 6 weeks of last season. They're late bloomers, and I would rather my team suck in the first half of the season than suck in the back half because the back half is when things get really real. So I wouldn't be too worried. If I'm the Texans, hey, still a young team. Nico Collins, man, everyone's questioning, hey, is he going to take a backseat? Hell no, he's not going to take a backseat. Nico Collins looks great. I love Nico Collins. I love his rise to stardom. Stephon Diggs, I'll give him credit because I didn't think that his ego will allow him to take a step back, but it did. Um, so shout out to him. Tank Dell, he's gonna hold it down. Joe Mixon's cool, but he's also out now. But so I would just say for the Texans, stay healthy, keep on pushing with CJ Stroud, and everything gonna fall in line for them.
Man, I agree, and they just got such a good foundation there. We touched on that earlier, but that's what you want to do when you bring in a rookie quarterback. Get that foundation around him and take advantage of him being cheap. 'Cause you don't need to you don't need to go bring in a quarterback if you're a shitty situation, and because it's not going to work out often than not. Look how many first round picks end up being busts. Yes, some of them just suck at football, but a lot of it is just they end up in a terrible situation. The Texans are one of the best situations that a rookie quarterback could go into. The Bears are another one, and you got to see them both face off. They're both teams that they're going to be very good teams, most likely. The Texans, 100%, and I think the Bears, as long as Caleb can live up to even some of the hype, they will be, because they were brought into these great situations. And it's just, that's so much of what the league is about. Like, look at Baker Mayfield. He starts off with the Browns. He's able to lead them to the playoffs. He's able to kind of break that curse for them. But they're just such a mess and so dysfunctional that not very long after they end up moving on from him, he goes and ends up at the Panthers. And it's just awful. They're a mess. He doesn't do well. It looks like he's probably done as a starter. So he goes and is a backup at the Rams. Tremendous situation. He has to go start a game, goes and wins that game for the team, and then all of a sudden gets a shot with the Bucks in another good situation. Look what happens. And I think that's really the big takeaway. Quarterbacks are so
I think
important to a team, but they're overvalued almost.
I think it's also something you have to mention too, right? Which you hit the nail on the head with your analysis there. But for a rookie quarterback, something that is extremely overlooked is the defense. Having a great defense will also take a lot of pressure off because look at Bryce Young is coming on the field. It seems like every 6 plays because that defense ain't stopping anything. The more times he's out there, the more times he's getting hit because the whole line. Bryce Young's situation just sucks. That's the worst situation I've ever seen for a quarterback. But we're talking Brown's level of failure. But for Caleb, he has a great defense, so he doesn't have to go out and score every single drive. Bryce has to go out and score just about every drive, right? CJ, he doesn't have to score every drive. And if CJ throws an interception or if Caleb throws an interception, that's not the end of the world. So their confidence doesn't get shot and they don't start trying to overplay on the next drive because they have to just erase that because they just gave up 7 points because the defense sucks. So having great defenses, obviously, right, the Bears defense is better than the Texas defense, I think, but Texas defense is not bad. It's a good defense. Definitely good enough to win you some games, but I don't think it's so great that it won't, lose you games. But um, having great defenses means a lot for rookie quarterbacks. It is almost like a great equalizer, right? Because they can make mistakes, not necessarily be punished at the highest level. Bryce Young, Bryce Young turned the ball over against the Saints. What happened? Touchdown. He turns over again. What happens? Touchdown. 14 points off two turnovers. I mean, that's a nightmare. If Caleb Williams turns the ball over, is hey, you might get the ball back with no points or kick a field goal. I'll take 3 points rather than 14. Same for CJ. So teams, if you're out there paying attention, you want to build a team, make sure you just don't forget about the defense. I know we talked about this most of this podcast of hey, surround your rookie with a lot of talent. Don't forget the defense either. The defense is going to help your rookie quarterback out so much.
Well, it's how the Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year. They focused on their defense instead of going out and getting expensive weapons. They relied on hitting on draft, having Travis Kelsey, and then going and paying their defensive guys, going and building that up. And the result was they had one of the best defenses in the league, won the Super Bowl. But we've been talking for a while, so we need to get out of here. One thing I did want to ask you about with this game, did you see what the Texans were doing with their five-man pressures?
I did not.
So this is something that they've been doing a lot of, and they really showed it last game. They do a lot of five-man pressures. Um, I don't have any stats pulled up for their percentages, but it's I think the highest percentage in the league that they do this. And their whole theory behind it is they want to isolate the center and make him have to block one-on-one and not be able to help. So it helps everyone else and also creates that
I
interior
understand.
pressure.
Now, I'm a D lineman. So when you saying that, I was like, oh, it immediately unlocked it in my brain. Oh, yeah. You're basically killing slides at this point because yeah, I mean, now that you're isolating this one, because I mean, the center usually has 3-man surface, right? 3-man slide. You got the two guards next to him. They usually go out of the way, or maybe a guard just comes out. We've seen a million times. You got a guy who's in a shade, in between the guard and the center, gets pinballed because the guard flashes out, checks the tackles work. Then he just comes back and just murders the inside guy. So simulating a 5-man, well, it's not simulating five. They are just sending 5 men. So that's yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I'm a blitz guy personally. Um, I like to see how much more creative they can get with that. That's good. I like that. That's good, Dave. That's a good point to bring up. I like that a lot.
I do too, and I feel like that might be where the future of the league is going. You're seeing a lot of these teams that have success. They're able to bring a lot of different types of pressures. The Saints bring a lot of different pressures. The Bucks bring a lot of different pressures. The Chiefs bring a lot of different pressures. The Texans, of course, as we said, bring those pressures. And there's been a little bit of a shift the past 2 years, actually, where defense is making a resurgence after offense was just dominating. It looked like the league was never going to be defensive again. Points per game have dropped down a little bit, and you're seeing creative things like this, like bringing in five-man fronts, bringing in these different types of pressures, and trying to confuse the quarterback, trying to get after him quickly, because realizing if he has time, the offense is going to cook. But you have to find creative ways that can't just be exploited, because you can't just go cover zero blitz, because you're going to get chewed up if you do that too much. I think we might be seeing a little bit of a pendulum swing, and you've really seen it the first 2 weeks. There's been some lower scoring games. Defense is starting to figure things out, and I think that's going to be interesting to see how it continues throughout the rest of the season.
Now I know we just said we're gonna get out, but we got. I mean, look, we gotta get through that topic. Um, So I'm gonna try to be quick with it. I'm gonna let my defensive mind run real quick. Um, you know, I wouldn't blame. I hear people blame COVID, right? Oh, because COVID it set the QB market back, right? You got guys staying in college a year later, whatever, whatever. No, I don't think that's the reason. It's just like I said earlier in this podcast, with the way that colleges are running offenses, it's not really teaching. It's not really opening the minds of these young quarterbacks. So quarterback play, right, has dropped down significantly. To now you're paying guys Drew Brees money, and they are not Drew Brees. You know what I mean? You're paying guys who are. I mean, you paid Tua $200 million. I mean, I think that's. I mean, that's all I have to say. I'm not trying to respect Tua or nothing, but if Tua was in that time with Brady, Breeze, Manning, right, Philip Rivers, he's not getting that money
Well, a
ever.
crazy stat that put it in perspective for me last year was last year there was one quarterback making between 20 million and 29 million dollars, and that was Geno Smith. Every single other quarterback in the league was either making above $30 million, like Derek Carr, who was a middle tier quarterback salary wise, or was on a rookie slash backup slash journeyman deal. There's no, it's kind of like the economy. There's no middle class anymore. Everyone's either getting that huge money or on the cheap. And I think that's really what's messed up the market is every contract has to reset the market to get players paid more, especially with quarterbacks. But when you're doing that with the Tuas, with the Jordan Loves of the world, there's no middle class for QBs anymore, salary wise, and it's really starting to hit.
When you put it that way, it makes a lot more sense. I mean, there was a much better hierarchy, a much better tier system back then, right? But I mean, the whole, you know, quarterback play just in general is just worse, right? And the league is all about trends, much like a lot of things on this planet, right? And now that you have no middle class of quarterbacks, I mean, you kind of do because, once more deals start happening, you start bumping guys down because Derek Carr is now purely middle class, but he was higher before that until he got bumped down by all these quarterbacks getting deals. But now, since you have lower tier QB play, the parity is starting to come back. It is a pendulum in the NFL. We've seen for those couple years where, boom, right? It seemed like every rule that they were making favored the offense is at the top of Newton's cradle, right? Balls at the top of Newton's cradle, and that's offense. And now it's swinging back, and now it's come defense. Last year, I think, was the first time you see it at the top of the other side of Newton's cradle, on the other side of the pendulum where now we're on the defensive side. Now it's going to take a couple years for it to, when you pull a Newton's cradle, it bounces the balls back and forth, and it slowly starts to, get back to the middle, and it stops back to perfect equalized middle. It's going to take some time to get back to that, but I think with the emergence of cover six defense last year, right? Where you have cover four on one end, you got cover two on another side, and you have the box and triangle technique where one side is running a box in terms of zones, and the other side is running a triangle. So you basically have if there's two receivers on one side over here, you have two DBs over here, maybe a linebacker, and then maybe like a slot or a nickel hybrid. Because also now teams are running these nickel hybrids. I think the Rams are actually running a DB at linebacker. So you're starting to get these different creative ways that defense is tweaking their schemes. So now that you have a box over here to the man side, right, in cover six, there's not a lot of options, right? And then if you bring some pressure with it, or really it's not you don't even have to bring pressure, you just know that these quarterbacks nowadays aren't really going to read that well because it doesn't look like cover. It looks like cover four, right? But it's actually cover six. So it messes with them. And their reads, their timings, all that gets messed up. And now defenses are really honing in on messing up timing because there's a lot of RPOs now in the league. There's a lot of play action. There's a lot of quick throws. All of those are rhythm. So they're messing up the rhythm with these little, nice little bump here. Maybe we flash a guy out here, and then like I said, with the triangle technique on the back end of a cover six, it plays with timing and it messes up these quarterbacks who are not the most cerebral quarterbacks anymore. They're not thinkers of the game. CJ Stroud is a thinker of the game, but out of all the quarterbacks drafted, he's like the one, right? And that ratio is just not good. So now, right, if you look at what the Saints do, here you go, drinking game. Calvin says Saints again. Look at what the Saints do. The reason why Lante Taylor got 3 sacks is because if you look back at that, instead of pulling the center, what they're kind of doing is they're kind of letting him read. Because if you notice, he's coming off late. He doesn't immediately rush. He comes off late because what they're doing is they're letting the inside guys kind of dictate where the guard or center is going to go. Because let's say the tackle decides, hey, I'm gonna run out, right? Run through the B gap. Guard's probably gonna pull with him. Maybe the center pulls him. Guess what? That's gonna open up the backside A gap, right? So that's a shoom. He can shoot there. Because if you notice, those 3 sacks all came from different gaps. So that tells me that he's reading that based off of which way the O line is sliding, based off of what the inside guys or DMs are doing. And I think that that is our own way of being like the Texans with their 5-man pressure. So instead of sending uh sending a guy to make the guard. So I get it, right? They're pulling the guards outside, so then that center is sitting there isolated. He has to make a decision, and then whatever gap opens up, front side or backside, hey, that's the one you shoot. So instead of doing that with the center, we're just doing that with the whole line. So you're starting to see defensive coordinators get in their bag a little bit. They start thinking about it a little bit more because these offenses they're getting a little, they're getting simpler and not really in a good way. And with RPOs on the rise, with these bubble screens on the rise, you start to knock off that rhythm a little bit. There you go. I had to let the defensive mind run out a little bit.
Hey, I mean, I think this is a really fascinating time because this is the pendulum shift that we're seeing. We're seeing defense coming back. People thought that it was dead, but you're seeing all these really good coaches, all these Dennis Allens, these D'Amico Ryans, these Todd Bowles, these Spagnolas that we've mentioned throughout this recap. And there's just so many other good defensive minds. They're in their bag. They're cooking, and it's really fun to watch. And I'm really intrigued to see how this continues. But do you have any other closing thoughts before we take it out?
Who that? Is defensive minded coaches may be back in style, boys and girls. They just might be back. Um, we had a while there where the little cute, flashy offensive coordinator type guys were all the rage, and it looks like we might be getting back to the nitty gritty, old school. But yeah, shout out to the Saints handling business when we supposed to. Shameless plug, shameless plug. Uh, follow. Hold on, let me make sure I ain't spread misinformation on the timeline. Our podcast, Dave's been on it a few times. It used to be the AC podcast. It's no longer that. We have rebranded. We still gonna get the graphics right. We still growing, but follow Days Not Over Pod on Twitter, or just type up the days, or just type up Days Not Over Podcast on Twitter. It should pop up. We're gonna be on Spotify on the same name. Go on YouTube, same situation. Days Not Over Podcast. Um, you'll find me there. You'll find Aaron there, and Dave. When can we find you there, man? We've been missing you for these last couple episodes, man.
We have. I need to get back on there. We just need to get that recording schedule down there. Feels like between three of us, there's always something that comes up. Usually that's a Preston problem whenever I'm recording here trying to get him on, but kind of felt some of that there. We need to get it on, but hey, we've been yapping for 2 whole hours about football. If anyone's actually made it this far, leave a like, leave a comment. Shout out to you. I hope that you enjoyed some of this insight. And Calvin, anything you want to say in closing?
Wash your hands, smile, pray, drink your water, keep your face clean, mind your business. There you go. Keys to life.
Keys to life. Spin DBG Podcast. We'll see y'all next week.